today this will be my final 2028 election prediction in the month of September of 2025. Let's go ahead and get started. So, I have Gavin Newsom, who is currently leading all of the Democratic, or most of the Democratic primary polling, early Democratic primary polling. And I think the mood in 2028 is still going to be very, very liberal resistment against Trump. And I think the other candidates of people who are actively speaking up against Trump are Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, Pete Buttigieg, a little bit, and maybe Kamala Harris, but Kamala Harris definitely won't be on a VP ticket with Gavin Newsom. And then I would say that's really it. Maybe AOC, but Gavin Newsom would never pick as someone as progressive as AOC. So I have Gavin Newsom picking governor of Maryland, Wes Moore. This could also help Gavin Newsom with the minority vote. Now, J.D. Vance is also leading all the Republican primary polling, and he will probably pick Marco Rubio, who works in the Trump administration and is also a former senator. So let's go ahead and get started with all the safe states. Now, I do think Florida would be safe. Marco Rubio is a popular senator from Florida, or I would say more popular. If we look at the Senate elections and we go to 2022, he won it by 16%, while in 2018, Scott only won it by 0.12%. Now, I do know that over these 4 years, there was a huge shift to the right. But we look at the presidency, we see Rubio, 2020, we see Rubio greatly, it was in 22. Yeah, so Rubio gained 13 points in 2 years. And then Scott in 24, even in a very Republican year, more Republican than 22, only won it by 12%. So we do see Rubio is a popular figurehead in Florida, so I do think Florida would be safe. I would like to say Ohio is safe, but on a local state level, we see they only won the Senate seat by around 3.6%, which is still a very good margin, but won it by around 3.6%. And then in 2022, Vance won Ohio by 6.1%. If we go to the presidential level, though, in 2020, we see Trump won it by 8%, and then in 2024, Trump won it by 11%. So on a general election level, Ohio looks like it will be safe. And with J.D. Vance being a former senator from there, I would not be surprised if Ohio goes to him by over a 10% margin. Now, of course, Alaska. Now let's go ahead and get started for the Democratic safe states. I think that will be Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington. Would not be surprised if we see I need to change this. If we see New Mexico go back into the safe column for the Dems, as we saw Biden won it by 10% in 2020, although Clinton only won it by around 8.2% in 2016, and Harris only won it by 6%. So New Mexico probably won't be safe. Of course, Illinois, New York, all these other. And in New Jersey, I don't think New Jersey will be going back into the safe column for the Democrats. As we see on the local state level, the Republican governor candidate and the Democratic governor candidate are tied in polling right now. So very close election in state level. So I do think New Jersey will not be a safe state for the Dems by 2028. Now let's move over to likelies. I think Texas will go to J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio by around a 6 or 7% margin, same margin that Trump won it in 2020. And besides Texas, and of course this district of Maine going them by around 8 to 7%. I think Minnesota will go. You know what? No, I don't. I think Minnesota will not be a safe state. I think New Mexico will be a likely. Virginia will be a likely, and I think New Jersey's a likely. Now, and this district of Nebraska. Now let's move on to some of the closer states. I think Minnesota, especially without anyone from Minnesota on the ticket, Minnesota will go to Gavin Newsom Westmore by around that 4 to 3% margin. I also think the same for New Hampshire, around that 3 to 4% margin. Based off polling data, even in 2020, in a year that was very bad for the Republicans, we saw Trump win North Carolina by 1.3%. It was really the only swing state he won. So I don't think North Carolina would be switching, unless if like Roy Cooper's on the ticket, and even then he would be way too old. I do expect North Carolina to stay with the Republicans. Also, even in 2020, Biden only won Arizona by 0.31%, and in 2024, Trump won it by 5.5%. I expect J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio to win it by around 2016 margins, where Trump won it by around 3.5%. Now, a lot of data shows that a lot more people are changing their voter registration in Pennsylvania to Republican. And if we look at this, Trump's approval rating is negative 7.2 right now. A lot of this has to do with Epstein file stuff, but if by 2028 the Republicans get the Epstein stuff figured out, I think Trump's disapproval rating will be closer to negative 7 or stay around the same, or closer to negative 6%. He is definitely polling better than he did in his first term. In his first term, by here, he was only polling around, in 2020, he was only polling around a 41% approval rating. He was still able come very close in Georgia and Arizona, although a lot of people didn't like how old Biden was. Of course, Trump was also old. With Gavin Newsom being a little bit younger, I believe he's in his 50s. How old? Let's see, how old is he? Gavin Newsom. He'll be 61 by 2028, and JD Vance will be like 49, 50, I think, by 2028. Or how old is J.D. Vance? J.D. Vance. Oh, dang. Yeah, J.D. Vance will only be 45 by 2028. So this could definitely help J.D. Vance's appeal. Based off voter registration data, though, I am going to have to give Pennsylvania to J.D. Vance. But I do expect Wisconsin and Michigan to both go to Gavin Newsom and Westmore in this scenario. Now, I don't think Gavin Newsom is the absolute best candidate. Gavin Newsom could definitely do some numbers in Georgia. And then here, the last state, it's going to come down to Nevada. In 2020, Biden won it by 2.4%. 2016, Clinton won it by 2016, Clinton won it by 2%. 2020, Obama won it by 7, or 2012. 2008, Obama won it by 12. But in this past election, we saw Trump win it by 3.1%. Nevada could keep shifting to the right. I would not be surprised if Gavin Newsom and Westmore could come out on top. But if we go to a Senate level, we saw a Democrat win it in 2024, even in a Republican year. And we go to a House level. Well, not House. Governor, sorry. When was the last governor election in Nevada? In 2022, a Republican won it by 1.5%, but this was in a Republican year, I guess. But in a anti-Trump year, which was 2018, we saw a Democrat win Nevada by around 4.1%. So, and with Westmore helping with the minority vote in Nevada, I would not be surprised if Nevada does go to the Dems. Also, would not be surprised if it went to the Republicans. But for now, I think I'm going to give it to the Democrats. Just because of Trump's disapproval rating. But the Republican Party as a whole has a pretty bad disapproval rating. But same with the Democratic Party. But anyway, thank you all for watching. And peace out.